Hello, and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Pool community. My name is Wack. Today is June 11th, and today's episode is going to cover some amazing price action from RPL. We're going to be talking about the community call, IMC report. On the Ethereum side, we're going to be talking about this $1 trillion security overview. We're going to be talking about GETH, some interesting stuff maybe happening there. The PAS, the Protocol and Applications team, how that's going to work on the Ethereum Foundation, and we're going to be talking about ETF flows and more. So let's get started.
10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Okay, so the only place to start today is by talking about RPL price action. Now, I don't talk about the price action all too often on this show, so yeah, I just don't do that. But this is has actually been a really nice few days for RPL, and I think it's a good place to start because the price action has actually been doing some really interesting things these last few weeks. So we know that RPL has been shorted like really badly, and it looks like that people have been taking a lot of profit from that for quite a while. But it looks like there's as attention comes back to crypto and Ethereum and the ETH ecosystem, people looking for that beta play. And the point now is, can RPL come through as a beta play for ETH? And it looks like it might be the very beginnings of that moment. And the reason why I'm saying that is because just a few weeks ago, RPL was at $3.14. That's where the local bottom was in just a few weeks ago. It was brutal. Since then, we've hit new lows on the ratio as well, but the price has started to bounce, and hopefully this is a time when we can build from this, because with increased price comes attention, and with attention comes the fact that people can learn about Saturn 1 and 2, the fee switch, all that good stuff. So anyway, with these shorts, what happens is if the price moves quickly and people are short on the asset, then they can get liquidated quite quickly. And because of the low market cap of RPL, and because of the fact that it's on all major exchanges, the price can move quite quickly when the time comes. So even quite a conservative short, such as 2x short, if the price moves up, if it doubles, then that person is going to get liquidated, and that's what I think we've seen happen here. So the price moving from $3.14 a few weeks ago, it pumped up to $7.39, and then it retraced quite a lot back into that $4 kind of price range. But since then, it's kind of had a couple of these impulsive moves up, and the one that we're experiencing right now went from $5.17 just a couple of days ago all the way up to $7.77. So that is nearly a 30% increase in price. I'm sorry, nearly a 60% increase in price over a matter of days. And now we're sitting pretty at around $7.30, which is up 25% on the 24 hours. But earlier it was up like over 30 or 40%. It's just it was catching more of those green candles. And this just shows you that RPL here right now could be hopefully the beginning of attention coming back to the ETH ecosystem. We're going to be talking about that later as well, but also RPL potentially being in a position where it can capture some of that move. So that's really, really exciting. Okay, something else that's exciting here is the latest community call, which will be taking place on Wednesday at 11 p.m. UTC. So if you are in, depending on what time zone you're in, you'll be able to listen to this. So here, Rocket Pool Twitter account says, if you're keen to hear the latest progress updates on Saturn upgrade and learn how you can participate on the testnet, then Langers will be joined by Ken will be joining. Langers will be joined by Ken. Or Ken will be joining Langers. Or Langers will be joining Ken. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, sorry about that little sidestep there. But yeah, the community call will be taking place later today, so you can listen in. And yeah, you can ask your questions if you want. You can put them in the Discord, and Ken will ask Langers your questions. And then also you can get information about using Saturn on Hoodie and getting it live on testnet, and how you can play around with some of those new features. So this is really exciting. Of course, the best source of news is these community calls, because without it coming from Langers's mouth, or being on the forums or whatever. There's an element that some of it's just kind of speculation. The team still does carry a lot of authority on what things are happening and when things are coming. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on that one. That's going to be a good one. I'll be listening in later. Okay, we have the latest IMC report. This is for period 36 and a budget for period 37. So here Samus is sharing the information, and he says that the MC continued spending budget cut and calculating values of artificial 0.005 ratio. Last month there were 12.1 thousand RPL of inflows, and outflows were around 8.7 thousand. 8,700. So there's balance change. So 96% change from 3,500 RPL to 6,900 RPL. And then that was partly because of a 1.1 thousand RPL inflow came from Cake Pie reimbursement, because the IMC paid Cake Pie incentives for paying Pancake Swap, but the Pancake Swap shut down the gauges prior to the spend, so the funds were returned to the IMC. The IMC has decided not to spend the allocation previously budgeted for Cake Pie, which was 1,100 RPL per fortnight, which contributed to an additional 2,200 RPL not being spent. And the IMC is still deliberating on how this will be spent moving forward. And then Hop is in the process of migrating to version 2. I shutting down version 1 for now and requested we stop sending incentives for now. So the 100 RPL per period previously spent for Optimism Arbitrum is now contributing to the budget surplus. And then Balancer sent USDC as part of the Balancer Alliance fee share. This will be used to help kickstart the version 3 position, and this is planned to be deployed as written in the LP 80-20% Balancer ETH. And then there's budget for 37. So it's a Balancer provided a $10,000 grant to assist in kickstarting the V3 position, expecting to have another 33% surplus as we deliberate the best plan for extra funds moving forward. And then there's data on the 1% price impact, and then our ETH is being trading relatively close to peg, in due part to balance the pay demand at the moment between node operators and our ETH holders. And that's that information. So that was a nice little report from Samus. Thank you for sharing that, Samus. Okay, let's move on to some ETH news. And a few weeks ago, we had this idea being put forward about Ethereum being having $1 trillion security, and the $1 trillion security initiative have now put out a report, and this is their first report, and they're talking about the security challenges in the Ethereum ecosystem. This report's actually really beautiful to look at, and we're going to have a look at it in a second. But there's 6 key areas: user experience, smart contracts, infrastructure and cloud security, consensus protocol, monitoring, incident response and mitigation, and social layer and governance security issues. And next step is for the 1TS project to use this report to choose the highest priority issues and then start dealing with those. So are there any problems that were missed, or do you believe the highest priority security issues to be, what do you think that should be discussed and addressed, and what ideas or solution do you have for how to address those issues? So if you have a look at the report, it's on the ethereum.org page, and the security challenges overview. So it says billions of individuals are each comfortable holding more than $1,000 on chain, collectively amounting to trillions of dollars secured on Ethereum. And then companies, institutions, governments are comfortable storing more than $1 trillion inside a single contract or application. So these are some of the goals that this team has. And then the 6 areas, like we just mentioned, those are summarized here, and actually go into quite a lot of detail. Like for user experience, they talk about key management, signing, transactions, approval and permission management, compromised web interfaces, privacy, fragmentation. For smart contract security, they talk about things such as contract vulnerabilities, developer experience tooling and programming languages, risk assessment of on-chain code. And then infrastructure and cloud security, they talk about L2 chains, RPC and node infrastructure, DNS level vulnerabilities, software supply chain and libraries, front-end delivery services and related risks, and also internet service provider level censorship. And then with the consensus protocol, they talk about things such as consensus brittleness and recovery risks, client diversity, staking centralization and pool dominance, undefined social slashing and coordination gaps, economic and game rhetoric attack vectors, quantum risks as well. And with monitoring, incident response and mitigation, they talk about things such as reaching the effective team, escalating the issues at related organizations, response coordination, lack of monitoring capabilities, and access to insurance. And with the social layer and governance, to talk about stake centralization, off-chain asset centralization, regulatory attack or pressure, organizational capture of governance. So there's some really interesting points here. Go ahead and read the whole report, and you'll get a good idea of what the team is thinking of in terms of what's going to be prioritized for helping all these people come on chain. Okay, there was an interesting discussion that came up because of this comment from Peter Silady, who is the lead at GETH, and he says the Ethereum Foundation fired 4 dev teams a week ago. And last I talked to Xiao Wei, she said that the goal is to also remove GETH in a couple of years to allow the Ethereum Foundation to be research education only. I thought they did try to do that at least 3 times while I was there, so that's not news. So yeah, that was an interesting point. And then Ethereum on ARM says, removing GETH, we truly hope that never happens for Ethereum's sake. If there's a project worthy of funding, that is it. And then Thomas replied by saying, there is no plan to remove GETH. It's a great client software and talented team contributing to protocol security. We'll maintain support GETH and continue making it even better and faster. So this was a really bit of a interesting back and forth here about some drama about funding GETH going forwards. I'm sure that the actual position is a little bit more nuanced. Here, Barabbas says, who's lying? Is it Peter or Xiao Wei? I don't know, but it looks like there's a little bit of tension there about the organizational changes and the reorganization of the teams and the Ethereum Foundation, and how everything's kind of working together there. But that's going to be one that I'm going to keep an eye on and see how things are going. Okay, talking about the changes at the Ethereum Foundation, here Nixo put out a post about the protocol and application support team and what it does. So Nixo will be working with protocol support, supporting the core development process, and then previously worked at ETHStaker. But here Nixo says that we're coming at the upgrade process from 2 different angles. So what goes into an upgrade and what comes out of an upgrade. So this team will basically, it says, this team will be working on those. So the current process for what goes into the upgrade should be clearer, and then the effort to help the app layer integrate new features. And right now the focus is on 7702 changes for wallets and wallet infrastructure, but generally be making sure that the app layer can make use of the features that come out on the upgrade. So it says with 1 and 2 together, it brings us full circle. The app layer uses the upgrades, should understand how to observe and participate in the upgrade process. So close interaction in 2 will help us design 1, not for just core devs, but those already intricately involved, but those stakeholders affected by upgrades. So yeah, that's really interesting about how the teams have been kind of repositioned and people within them are doing new things. Okay, and I know that, I haven't talked about the ETF stuff for many months because they're looking really abysmal. They're looking horrible. But there's been a big change towards making those better, and that's actually really exciting. Started making them, the inflows coming through, that's really exciting. And here we actually have news that yesterday's inflows were $125 million, which is actually the biggest day of inflows since February 4th, as Anthony Sassano here points out. He says $125 million net flow for the ETH ETFs today, biggest inflow day since the 4th of February. Accelerate. So I want to put out a theory that I think we're going to get a 1 billion inflow day in the week after crypto legislation passes, whether that's going to be the Genius Act or any of the other major crypto legislation that might be going through Congress. I think the passing of the Genius Act will just make people realize that if you want exposure to stablecoins, then the way to do that is by being on Ethereum. And if you are on Ethereum, then you will have access to this amazing technology that is happening and that is going to grow so much. I think we'll get $1 billion inflows into the ETH ETF that week, but also the price I think is going to do a very nice move up, and that's something I'm really excited about. And also, of course, if you have a look at the ETH chart, it wasn't just RPL that has been moving, but also ETH is at like $2,800, which is the most we've seen in a decent amount of time. The next point to break through out of is that 3,000 number, that psychological resistance at 3,000, and then I think there's a move to be made up to $4,000. But on that note, I'm going to end today's episode. So thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I hope you all have a lovely day ahead, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.